to day 2 of this mini book series. We're going to cover construction of the pages and the cover today. And then the last video is going to be decorating and adding photos to the mini book. So I'm going to start out with a 6x6 piece of specialty burlap paper from DCWV. And if you're going to use any kind of dies or other cutting implements for these specialty papers, especially for the burlap and some of the other types of papers that are more thick, I would go ahead and go with something that cuts heavy duty materials like these mixed media scissors from Fiskars and the originals and Biggs dies from Sizzix. They don't cut very reliably with some other dies and regular scissors, but they always cut perfectly with any of these tools that are meant for more heavy duty materials. So I go ahead and I cut 2 frames from my Sizzix original frame die. It's an old die, but any Sizzix die that makes something into a frame would work for this. I also am taking some Strathmore Bristol paper, which is just a thick paper. I happen to have it in that cartoonist version because I got it on clearance, I think. But Bristol is available in several different sizes. And I'm going to take that same die and cut one piece of the Bristol paper into the frame per each page that I'm going to use this frame for. And that's because I wanted a middle layer for strength. That way the page doesn't fall down or fall apart or get warped as easily. So I take 2 of the burlap frames, the Bristol frame, and I'm going to pull out 2 kinds of vellum. This first kind of vellum is a little pink polka dot on regular clear colored vellum. And I'm just cutting it down so that it will fit inside the frame. Now, using vellum is a really good way to add pattern, but still have a page where you can see through to some of the other embellishments on the next page, which is what I'm kind of going for. I go ahead and round the corners of the vellum so that I don't have any problems with any of the vellum sticking out of the frames once it's all put together. And I am just going to use some of this Scotch wet adhesive. It has a 2-way applicator, and I'm going to just start gluing all of the pieces of this page together. Now, knowing what I know now, I think I still would have gone with this Scotch adhesive, but I also think I definitely, once I got it all put together and it was starting to really dry, I think next time if I do this particular kind of page, I would have chosen, I will choose to put it between maybe some pages of an encyclopedia or something while it dries, because it did warp a little bit, but I don't think that's all to do with the quality of the adhesive. I think the quality of the adhesive is very good, but I just set it up on a shelf and it wasn't particularly flat, and it wasn't, and so I think I next time would just make sure that as it continued drying that it would stay flat and stay as together as possible. So that is my tip for using this adhesive. It is a very good, very strong adhesive, but if you allow it as it dries to stay in an odd shape, it will continue to stay in that odd shape. So that first page is done. As you can see, it gives me a see-through panel in the middle, which I'll show you here. Yep. And then it gives me a pretty stiff outer edge for putting together my book when I get to the construction stage later on. I'm going to make the same page with the pink burlap and the black printed vellum, and another piece of Bristol paper as my stabilizer. And I'm just showing you here again how I use the same steps, put it all together. There's adhesive in between each layer, and again I get a perfect little page where there's a vellum feature for my album. The next page is just going to be a die cut panel, and I'm just going to cut out this word paper, and it says things like this is the best day, and I love you so much, and always remember this, and things like that. Just sort of kind of special day phrases. And it is kind of a shiny black with gold foil lettering. Now I want to make sure as I put this through that the die doesn't move. And also, when I was at CHA and we were at the Sizzix booth and they were using, this is a Spellbinders die that I'm using, one of the labels dies, but they were using some of their Thinlits, which are very similar to these dies. And the lady who was demoing it said if you put the die through on an angle, it will cut cleaner. And I actually found that to be true, because I did one way and I did one the other, and the first one, which I cut on an angle, just fell out of the die basically, and the second one I definitely had to pop it out of the die. So right now I'm just trying to cut a bunch of the papers, and then I will assemble the pages all at the same time. So that little card there is what I'm going to use for my cover. And so I wanted to make sure that the panel that I cut from this gold striped paper is going to fit pretty easily with the size of that cover page. So this one right here is just going to be the very back of my album. And I'm going to cover most of it because I'm going to put a big panel for journaling on the back of it. So I decide that that page is going to be, I don't need a pattern paper because I'm going to cover most of that up. So I just choose that nice pearlescent pink colored paper from one of the 5-packs. Now I'm just going to use some regular adhesive and coat the back of the panel, and I cut these two out of the same die, so that is a front and a back of the page that I just put together. And then I'm going to do the same thing with these two panels, and once I get finished attaching them, I'm going to take my angled corner chomper and add a little interest to the page by making all the corners an angled cut. Later on, I end up having to trim that down just a bit. I don't ever show that in any of the videos, but it didn't quite fit in the box at that size. I wanted it to stick up a little, but I figured out that that frame that I made, the vellum-filled frames, were about as big as could fit in that box and not get completely stuck down there. So I ended up having to trim it, but it still did have an angled element to the corners. It just wasn't so severe. So right now I'm just trying to figure out how many pages I have and how many pages I still need, and exactly what order they're going to go in, because I don't want to, if I go back and I use any patterns, I don't want to use the same pattern on a facing page, because I want it to be have a lot of variety between every page. And so right now I'm deciding that the one thing that it kind of needs is just a plain, little bit larger square page in the middle to give the whole album a little more structure. So I take this really glittery gold glitter paper and this red and white stripe, and I make a page to go in the middle of the stack. It also brings in a lot of that gold color just to the overall design. And in the end, having the gold panel helps remind me as I'm going through each of the pages and putting embellishments and pictures on it that I needed to continue that metallic gold color and the glittery gold all the way through. Now what I just did is I took the insides of that came out when I cut the frames, those little burlap panels, and I decided to make small pages to go in between. So I just took them and I doubled them up so they'd be pretty substantial, and added those to the stack of pages that I have for my album. Now I'm ready to use this Heidi Swapp card and some Heidi Swapp color shines, because this card was one of the color shine resist products, and so it has a kind of a stripe across the front of it, and that stripe is half resist material. And so I'm spraying it on there, and then I'm just taking that's actually a sock. I use mismatched socks that don't have a match as my towels. Fun fact about me, I use socks as my towels in the craft room. And I'm just kind of trying to do a little bit of an ombre with a little gold color shine, and I think it's cherry bomb color shine, which is kind of a reddish, a real dark reddish pink color. And so I really love the way it came out. Oh, hello, there's me. And I'm just taking my heat gun and setting that. I did dry it a little bit from the back in order to really set, because sometimes with paper, this one didn't actually end up doing that, but sometimes with these kind of papers, if you oversaturate it a little bit, it ends up bleeding under into the back and underneath where the resist is. But these resist papers from Heidi Swapp are really, really good quality, so that doesn't happen all the time. I just really oversaturated this one, and I wanted to make sure that it was as dry as it could be all the way through. So now I am just going over the top once it's dry and rubbing away any of the color shine that was dried onto the top of the resist portion of that card, so that I could really see the contrast between the resist and the paper where the color shine soaked in. And then I'm just taking the back of the card that I originally cut off and stabilizing the cover by layering those together, since they were cut to go together in the first place. And then you'll see here when I turn it over, it gives that end a nice white tab that adds a little bit of interest. And then it didn't line up exactly because I didn't cut it very, very nice in the beginning, so I had to clip off a few places, but it matched very, very well. And that's all the pages. I'm going to show them, I'm going to fan them out here so you can see them all together. Next time, I'm going to add the pictures and all the embellishments, and we're going to give you a look at the finished product. So thank you.